Alright, so in this video I wanted to start working on some inlay. I haven't done inlay before, and so I want to try and make something with an inlay. So I decided I'll make for my first inlay project is going to be a coaster. So we're going to create a new file, and I figure a coaster must be like maybe 3.5, 4 inches by 4 inches. Probably 1/2 inch, but I'll probably cut it out of 3/4 inch wood. Yeah, I'll keep it 3/4 inch wood, and we'll say OK. First, we're going to need a circle for the coaster. Now, you notice how when I get close to the middle, it shows me these guidelines being in the middle. Now, you could forget about that and just go over here and say your center point is 2 inches and 2 inches because I made it 4 inches, and your circle is however big. So you can actually plug the numbers in manually, or you can draw it out like I did. Most of the time I'm just making stuff up as I go, so I'll just draw it out and move it where I need to go. You can also, if this thing was off-centered, if you drew your circle off-center, you can still use this here, which is alignment, and you can align to the material, which is your extents that you put in originally, and you can basically say center it. Okay, the inlay that I want to make is my Order of Hobbies logo, and so I need to import that graphic. Use this import bitmap for tracing, and I have my logo here. And now you can see that this logo has shadow, black on the inside, red, good solid red border here, and so I'm actually going to use that red border as my color that I'm going to trace. So when you go into trace bitmap, which is this guy here, you have this choice to do black and white color, and then how many colors do you want. So basically a lot of this is this different shade of shadow and then different shades of red, because designing this logo in Photoshop or Illustrator, there's not perfectly solid colors. You can slide this threshold down to basically make all of the colors combine into one solid color. So that's a really great feature of Aspire, in that you can have it combine the similar colors together for your tracing. Okay, so I want the red because that's the most solid. I don't want the black. I could probably choose the black, but the black would probably get some of the shadow. Yeah, and you can see that some of this is red, right? And I don't want that. So I want the red. A lot of times I just let the default settings here for the corner fit, the noise filter, and the fading. If you were trying to do a picture or an image, you may want to play with some of these. For this particular one, I don't need to do anything with these. So the weird thing about this tracing bitmap is you have to say preview. And then once you preview, you can see where it's created the lines, the black solid lines. Right? So you can see the vectors it's going to create. And then you're not done, because if you close out of this, it won't have created anything at all, right? There's nothing there. So you actually have to say, take the red, take the preview, and then hit apply. And now after you hit apply, it's actually created the vectors that you need. And you can close this. Now you can hide this bitmap because it's very intrusive. It's like it's in the way. You can hide this on a different layer. You could create a layer, right? And you could just hide the layer. I just prefer to delete it because I don't need it anymore. I don't mess a ton with the layers. Every once in a while I'll do stuff that's very, very complicated. I'll mess with these layers. And they're very powerful, but they get confusing. Sometimes you don't know when you're working on something and it's in a particular layer or not, and you get things all messed up. So I generally avoid the layers just to keep things simple for me. All right, so we're going to size. Now, if I size this, you can see from whatever corner I size it from, it's going to shrink in that direction, which is okay. But let's say, for instance, you were already centered, and now you wanted to size this. You can hold Shift, and it will size it from the center, which is a really nice feature. So I usually do that. Let's see, I'm going to hit F to frame my entire job. So that's probably, I mean, for an inlay, that's probably pretty good. I think what I'll do is, if this is going to be the outside of the coaster, I think what I will do is I will offset this inwards, let's say by 1/8 of an inch. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. And then I'll do one more. Okay, so now what I'll do is, this will be my outside of my coaster. I will do inlay here and here, so there'll be an inlay here, and then inlay for my HH. Now, if you can see, my HH is a set of double vectors here, and I don't want that. I just want 2 H's. I don't want the border of the H's. So I have to right-click and ungroup these, because as it traced them, it put them in a big group, and I can ungroup them back onto the object layer. It doesn't really matter because I'm not using layers. And then I will delete the inner vectors. Okay, so these are the vectors that I need for my inlay job. And now we have to do the toolpaths to create the inlay. We need 2 different toolpaths. Now this is actually symmetrical, because these should be symmetrical, and of course circles are symmetrical. We can check if they're symmetrical by using the mirror transform object here, and we can say flip horizontally, and you can see that they move slightly. They move slightly, and so they're not perfectly symmetrical. And so with that said, if you have something that's not perfect, you have to flip it for the inlay. So I'll do that. I'm going to go ahead and save this project here. I'll create a new folder called Inlay Coaster. And we're going to call this V-carve, because they're both V-carves, but one is the opposite and is going to fit into the other V-carve. So one I'm going to call V-carve, which will be the base, and one I'm going to call inlay, which will be the opposite. So this one's going to be the V-carve. Okay. Now the V-carve, we can select these things that we want to V-carve, and we can go into V-carve. I'm going to use a 90-degree half-inch V-bit. There's a lot of options. If you had something that had more detail, you could use a 60-degree, or even more detail, you could use a 30-degree. But just know that the higher the degree, the longer it's going to take to make. There's also other options you have to use a clearance tool, and we'll get into that as we do the other side of things. But for this one, I'm just going to use the 90-degree V-bit. You also need a flat depth, because if I don't do a flat depth, then what's going to happen is, I'll show you. If you don't do a flat depth, it's going to create a super deep carve, right? And so I mean that if I wasn't using a 3/4 inch material, let's say I wanted to put this in a 1/2 inch material, this would go right through it. And the V-carve doesn't really care how thick it is. It may warn me that it's going to bust all the way through, but it will still bust all the way through. So my flat depth needs to be something like 0.2 or 0.25. Let's go. So we'll calculate that, and you can see now it's created more lines inside of here because it's going to flatten that out. Actually, let's reset this preview and preview this. So you can see now it's flat here at 0.25 inches. It's just flattened out. And this going around the outside, it's just done one complete line. That's because the thickness of this line didn't allow the V bit to get deeper than 0.25, which is what I said the flat depth is. Okay, so I think this looks good. Again, I haven't done inlay before, so I'm kind of guessing on a lot of this stuff, but I think this looks good. This gives a nice big thick area for the inlay to fit into, and it gives plenty of clearance. I'm going to make my inlay like 0.2 total, and so it's going to have some room in the bottom for the glue, because they say that you're supposed to have area for the glue to sit. And so I'll have 0.05 for some glue to sit. And that should be good. We'll find out. But nice thick lines, nice thick, nice and thick, nice and thick. So we're going to close this, and I think the V-carve side of things is done. I think that's all I really need. I probably do need to make something that cuts all the way through. So we'll do a profile toolpath. We're going to go all the way through with a 1/4 inch end mill. Outside, 6 passes is fine. I actually don't know what I'm going to make this base out of. Probably something like walnut or mahogany, something dark. And then I'm going to make the H's out of hard maple, is what I think. Of course, when I get out to the garage and find out what kind of wood I have out there, that may change things. I don't need tabs, although you could add tabs. I generally don't. A lot of times I just, as this is going through its last pass, I'll hold it down, or I'll use double-sided tape to hold it down. Tabs are probably safer, but for me, they're a big pain to cut off. So we'll calculate this. We can go ahead and preview. And after you preview, you've got these bits that are left over. You can double-click them, and the Spire will hide that bit. So that's what my coaster would look like. And of course, I really wouldn't want it that thick. So I think I'm going to make this 0.5 instead of 0.75. My inlay only went 0.25, so I'm only going halfway through, which is fine. Now that I've changed the thickness, though, see that warning said my profile went too deep. So all I really need to do is go into the profile and say, you know what, I'm not cutting 7.5, I'm cutting only 0.5, and we'll calculate that. And just for the heck of it, we will recalculate all the tool paths since I changed things. When I change things, I generally like to recalculate them all. We will preview them all, just to make sure everything's still. And that looks a little better. This 0.75 was just too thick. All right. So now we're going to save these. Save the toolpath. Now it's important if you're messing around with your post processors, like I had my laser post processor on, I don't want to use the laser. I want to use just the standard Mach 3 inches toolpath. I can select my V-carve and hit save. And it should automatically put me in the right folder. So we're going to call this V-carve. And we're going to call this one profile. So these are fine. All right, so let me save this. It's important to save. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to do a save as. And we're going to call this inlay. And we'll save that. And now we can actually delete these toolpaths because we don't need these in the inlay side of things. We need a completely different set of jobs. Hit F. So now what I need is is the opposite of what we just had. So I select all of the vectors. Now you can also, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have material milled away everywhere but here, right? And you'll see that in my preview. So you need an extra vector on the outside of things to make that happen. Some people will use a square. Some people will, make a bigger vector going around. I already had this one here, and so I'm just going to use that. I can throw this on the bandsaw and cut this out. I think it'll be easy enough to cut this out on the bandsaw. You could also create a profile job that automatically cuts this out. I may do that just to see, once I get on the machine, maybe I'll run that so that it routes it out instead of me having to throw it on the bandsaw. I think I'll do that. So select all the vectors. So now I've got before, remember, these were my V-carves. And so now just by selecting this outside one, it's now going to give me like a negative image of what I had already V-carved. I think it's easier if you just see that. So now the start depth, you can't start at 0 because you don't want these to line up exactly at the edges. You want the V-carve to start lower than what you had previously done. That way when they merge together, and you sand it all off, you'll end up with perfect edges. So we're going to go down 0.1, and like I said, I wanted to go 0.2 total, so my flat depth is going to be 0.1. Actually, I think my flat depth needs to be 0.2, right? So 0.1 I'm going to start, and then 0.2 is my flat depth. I'm still going to use the 90-degree V-bit. You have to use the same V-bit that you used to do the inlay. It's just you have to, because it has to match up. It has to be 90 degrees. If you use 30, you're going to use 30, etc. I do want to use a flat area clearance tool, because what happens is if I leave this the way it is and I calculate, you can see reset. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. But let's preview. Okay, so I don't know that I like that. Maybe this is supposed to be 0.1. Yeah, that'll make this looks better, because it had that little weird edge, which would not have been good. It's also got a weirdness here, but this area here is going to be cut off anyway. So this area right here is about where it's going to meet with the V-carve, and this area here is going to stick into. So I mean, it maybe even be like here. It's kind of hard to say, but if you didn't do down 0.1, then this area would probably bottom out, and you don't want that. Another thing you can do is, once this is all cut, you can probably sand this surface down some if you have to, because it's this area here that's going to marry with the inlay, with the V-carve. And so somewhere around here is going to be your new surface, your new top, right? This is going to be down, it's going to be flipped over, right? And this is going to go into your V-carve, and you're going to sand it, you're going to cut off everything that's up here, and you're going to sand off this area here until you get down and everything's level. Does that make sense? It'll make more sense, I think, when I do it on the machine. But I think this looks pretty good. I think this is pretty close. And I think I'm going to run with this. So I also do think I'm going to create that job that cuts this out. Let's see. This is the area I need to keep. This is the area I need to keep. So I can probably do another profile. Actually, I'll probably use that same profile that I had. But let's create it just to see what it looks like. Outside, 0.5, and end mill. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's preview. So not exactly, right? This is going to stick into the inlay and into the V-carve. This is the inlay. This is going to stick into the V-carve. This area outside of this line needs to be flat, and that's not flat. It's where the V-carve went into. So I actually need this profile path to be on this line. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let's reset. Let's preview all. And what that should leave me is just the peak that's going to go into the V-carve. Right? So this is just the peak going to go into the V-carve. It's going to be cut off about here on the bandsaw, and the rest will be sticking into the V-carve. So I think this looks pretty good. But here's what I wanted to show you. Without doing a bigger clearance tool, you are talking about oh no, cancel that. Yeah, 5 minutes. So you're talking about a 5-minute job, and that's because it's small. So that's actually not too bad. 5 minutes is no big deal. But if you did a larger clearance tool, let's say you did a 125 end mill, calculate, you can see how it's a lot less tool path, and now we're talking 3 minutes. So you're only talking 2 minutes. It's really not that big of a deal. On a bigger job, or let's say you're using a 30-degree V-bit, that would be a lot worse. You know, you're probably getting into the 10-15 minute range versus a 5 minute, and so now you're talking quite a bit more. For me, I think I'm going to go ahead and not have the pocket. I'm just going to do the V-carve without the flat area clearance tool, because 5 minutes, I can wait 5 minutes. Let's preview. Let's reset again. Anytime I make changes, I always preview. Yeah, so that's what I want. That's what I think I want. Like I said, this is my first one, so I'm going off of things that I've seen, and we're going to find out if this is the right solution or not. So I'm getting a little long-winded on this one because, like I said, I'm making this up as I go. So, but I think that's it. Let's export these jobs. I don't think I really need to export the profile 2. Oh, yes, I do, because the profile 2 was on the inside vector. So we're going to export both of these. So we're going to save. Make sure your post-processor is right. The V-carve. We'll save this, and we're going to call this Inlay V-carve. And this one we're going to save and call this Inlay Profile. And we're going to save this because I've already renamed it. And that's it. I think next stop will be on the machine. I will copy these jobs to a memory stick, and I will see you at the machine. All right, so here we are at the machine, and it's about to rain here, so I'll get the camera on the inside. Hopefully with the sun not shining, the light's not too bad from the backlight. But I've got these 2 pieces of wood. I'm not exactly sure what this one is, but it's hard, and this is hard maple. It's got a decent contrast of color. So I'm going to carve my base out of the hard maple and then my inlay out of the this wood here, and if you can tell me what kind of wood that is, I'd appreciate it. It could be mahogany. I'm thinking it's a mahogany, but I'm not exactly sure. But these were 2 scraps that I had sitting in my shelf. Okay, so these 2 pieces of wood were thinner than the 1/2 inch that I programmed on the computer, so I measured these. This one was 0.3, this one's 0.36, and so I went back in really quick and just reprogrammed the profile cut to not go 1/2 inch. The rest I'm okay with, because the inlay was going to be 0.25, I believe, and so that should go nearly all the way through, but not all the way through. And I think that'll be fine. Even if it went all the way through, I'm not as concerned with the underneath as I am with what it's going to look like on the top. And there you can see the sun has come out. So welcome to Florida, where it's about to monsoon, and then the sun comes out. And you can see over here, the sun is out, looks beautiful, but over there, it's about to monsoon. So I'm going to leave the camera in the garage, because if it starts to rain, I don't want it to get all wet. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take this off. When I'm going to put it back on, and it should be back in the same 0, so if I just leave the 0 the way it is, then I should be able to pick back up where I need to. Alright, so hopefully that's not going to be in the way. Let's do this piece. Let's set it here. This one is going to have to go here. This guy here. Alright, I'm going to load my other program. Alright, so that looks like it's it for that one. That took 8 minutes. So, and I think it actually looked pretty good. So I think I'm going to be good with that one. And now I need to change the bit and cut this piece out. And then once this piece is cut out, then I'm going to be able to glue it into this piece. And then once I'm glued it into this piece and it dries overnight, I'll cut it off on the bandsaw. Then I can cut out the circle. All right, so that's the idea. Let's change my bit. Alright, every time you change a bit, you have to re-zero. So that is my new 0. I have to load my profile program. Inlay profile. Get my bit started. And then we'll cut this out. Alright, so the idea is that now this piece will fit into this piece, and you can see that it does. So you can see that. Right? Slides right in there. It's a little loose, but once you squeeze it together, it's not. So I'm hoping that once I fill it with glue and I clamp it very well, that it will be nice and tight. But there's only one way to find out, so let's get this guy filled with glue. Some glue in there. Some glue all around the edge. And I will wipe off the excess. Make sure we're good coverage. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let me get my rag. Just give a quick wipe for excess. I'm gonna sand that all off later anyway. Alright, so now we're going to put this guy in here. And I am going to put my bricks on it, because that's quite a bit of clamping power. Alright, and now we wait. Alright, so here we are. We're about to take the bricks off. Take a look at this thing here. Alright, so now this needs to be cut off on the bandsaw. At least shaved down quite a bit on the bandsaw. And so let's do that now. Alright, so I should be able to run that through and shave off the top half of this. I gotta be careful not to touch this area here. Safety glasses. Alright, so the rest needs to be sanded off. And then, and I'm going to do that now too. Let's put you right here. I'm just going to set this up right here and sand. Good. Try for this one. Let's see. Let's get this cut out. See that? Alright, now we're going to put some Danish oil on it. Let's put Alright, so there is a start to finish custom inlay project. It came out nearly perfect. Let's see right here. Had a couple of glitches. I've got a little gap here. Nothing major. I don't think anything that's worth scrapping the entire project. And alright, so that's it. That's my first inlay project. You'll probably see some more coming from me because I think that's pretty cool. I really like it. I want to do a cutting board with some custom inlay on it, and that will probably be one of my next projects. Alright, so that's it, and thanks for watching.